everybody and welcome back to the FPL Family YouTube channel. I'm Sam and today we are going to be talking all things goalkeepers. Now of course goalkeepers are one of those positions where you kind of have one strategy or another. You're either going to go expensive, set and forget, or you're going to go cheap, set and forget, or you're going to go with rotating pairs. Now for me, I'll tell you what my strategy is generally speaking as we go through the video, but I think this season there's real potential to go with all of those strategies, and I don't think that there is a right or wrong answer. So we're going to start with the cheap goalkeepers. Now I'm not really going to look at the 4.0s. I will mention them in a minute though while talking about these guys, the 4.5 million goalkeepers. Now we have a few options in this bracket that we could feasibly invest in and keep for the majority of the season, particularly if you can get them rotating nicely. These are the 4.5 million goalkeepers that we have available in the game this time around, and there are some in there that you're just not going to go with because a lot of them are second keepers to the more expensive premium options that we are going to have a little look at later. But if you do want to say set and forget, or maybe Edison at Manchester City, then you have Stefan, who you could potentially go with as well. So you've definitely covered yourself out in terms of that goalkeeper position. But there are a few in here that you could feasibly have just set and forget on them and let them play every single game week, or at the very least have them as rotating pairs. Now I'm going to start with the two Southampton keepers because FPL have priced them at the same point this year, probably because last season was a bit of a nightmare in terms of knowing who was going to start out of Forster and McCarthy. So we have them both in this 4.5 category this year. Now, I'm going to just say don't, because they are sitting bottom of the fixture ticker when you sort by difficulty. So there's not very much in the way of clean sheets looking likely across these first 5 game weeks of the season. So I think what we do have here is an opportunity where if we see Hasenhüttl play one of them consistently in those first 5 game weeks, they then do have a bit of a fixture swing. So feasibly at wildcard stage, you could swap in for whichever one of them it is. But I think if we continue to see what happened last time around, unfortunately, because we all do like owning McCarthy from an FPL perspective, we might have lost them as options. Gaeta's also in there at Crystal Palace. Now, we are seeing some phenomenal signings from Vieira. He is making some big statements, none less than bringing in Anderson, who was really solid at Fulham last time around when he came on loan. He's now arrived at Crystal Palace for this season, and I suspect we'll see some more defensive security from them going into this season now. When you sort the fixture ticker by difficulty of defence, Gaeta does sit with Crystal Palace second bottom. The fixtures aren't ideal, but he does rotate quite nicely with Nick Pope at Burnley. So if you wanted to go with a more expensive goalkeeper option, then you could, and go with somebody like Pope, then you could go Gaeta. It's going to cost you that little bit more because, of course, to have a guaranteed playing other keeper as well, you're going to have to probably pay that 4.5 price tag. But you could feasibly pair him with Pope, who we'll talk about in a little while, and have a really nice set of rotating options if you don't want to play Pope in every single game week of the season. Sanchez is in there. Of course, he is the most popular pick in terms of the goalkeepers at this price point. And that is no surprise because Brighton sit top of the fixture ticker when you sort it by difficulty. But I do have some slight concerns about Sanchez. These concerns aren't really anything to do with him, but the fact that they have lost a couple of key defensive players, none less than losing Ben White, I think will be, if that goes through, a major issue. And it does indeed look like Ben White is going to be an Arsenal player for next season. Not having him in front of Sanchez could provide more difficulty for clean sheets for him, because that defence was what was so positive about Brighton last time around. And of course, we've also had word that Tariq Lamptey isn't going to be available for game week 1. That's a problem as well when it comes to that defence. I am a little bit concerned about that now. Couple that with a new signing for them in the goalkeeper position. Now we no longer have the guarantee of the Sanchez-Steele combination at 8.5. So he has slightly detracted from him, for me anyway, as an investment perspective. But 27 appearances, 10 clean sheets last season. So the underlying stats do look good, and you can't overlook those fixtures. But it's Bachmann for Watford in here that really intrigues me. He's currently only owned by 2.6% of the game, whereas his teammate Foster is owned by significantly more than that, and of course he's 4.0. Now Foster hurt his finger last season and was replaced by Bachmann, who when he came in made 23 starts and kept 13 clean sheets. He also across all competitions saved 4 penalties last season. After the new manager Muniz arrived, he only conceded 3 goals in 13 home games, and they had of course Watford the best defence across the Championship last season. I am really tempted to go with the Watford double up in terms of those goalkeepers. I like the fact that you can spend 8.5 million on 2 goalkeepers and have a guaranteed starter every single week. Now, of course, that does mean that you are going to have to play them against some of the really difficult clubs. You know, when they come up against Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, Spurs, then you're going to have to, Chelsea, you're going to have to put your goalkeeper up against those guys. But there is save potential there, so it's not necessarily the end of the world. I think it's workable to go with those 2 Watford boys, particularly as I'm not sure that there's a lot of other options, certain options anyway, across the rest of that Watford side with 10 forwards listed in the game. Of course, there's Sarr, who's going to be incredibly popular, but the double up with the goalkeepers could just save you 0.5, which could be incredibly valuable elsewhere across your team. Let's move on then and have a little look at the 5 million goalkeepers. Now we have some really nice options in here, and you'll see that I've put both Manchester United goalkeepers in this graphic for now, at least anyway. So these are the options that we have available, and some of them you can just categorically rule out straight away. Kepa, for example, you just rule out because Chelsea are going to play Mendy in goal, and therefore it is not worth having a 5 million goalkeeper who you'll pretty much guarantee isn't going to play first team football very often anyway. Fabianski is also in there too. He had the 4th best save percentage, and when we have a little look at the save percentages from last season, we can see Fabianski in there in terms of those nice cheap 5.0 options. He comes in 4th, only bettered by Dean Henderson, who we'll talk about shortly. Now, sticking with Fabianski for a minute, he got 10 clean sheets last season, and going into this season plays Newcastle, Leicester, Crystal Palace, Southampton and United. So the fixtures look quite nice, particularly in those 4 opening game weeks. The Leicester City one might be a bit of a challenging game week too, but you certainly be happy to play him against Newcastle, against Crystal Palace and against Southampton. Now, I had a little look at who we could get to rotate with Fabianski, and if you have a little look at the Brentford keeper, the rotation is really quite nice, because when you don't want to play them in game week 2 and game week 5 against Leicester and United, you'd happily play your Brentford keeper. So I think that there is potential there for a rotating pair with Fabianski and the Brentford goalkeeper. Let's go back to Henderson then for a minute. So as you can see, he's sitting up there nice and pretty in terms of save percentage, with a save percentage of 78.4%. De Gea is a bit of a problem though when it comes to picking Henderson. So Henderson last season made 13 appearances and kept 4 clean sheets, to De Gea's 26 appearances and 9 clean sheets. So actually about half the performances from Henderson and about half the clean saves. So very similar in terms of stat percentages when you work those out. It is difficult with these 2. I don't think you're going to go both, because you're going to be spending 10 million on 2 goalkeepers, which feels like quite a lot when you look at what else is around. But if from Ollie we get some understanding of who is his preferred first choice goalkeeper, then one of these could make for a really nice pick, particularly when you've got to pay 5.5 to invest in the Manchester United defence. So going with one of these 2 when we know which one it is might just be a really nice option. We've also got Meslier in there, and when we have a little look at the saves from last season, we see Meslier in there in 4th. Now, of course, Johnson and Ramsdale no longer part of the Premier League after their clubs got relegated. Meslier made 141 saves in the division last time out, keeping 11 clean sheets in 36 appearances. The fixtures are a bit mixed, to be honest, when it comes to Leeds going in. They've got the 4th worst defensive fixtures of the season. So United and Everton to start, then Burnley, Liverpool and Newcastle. So there's 3 games in there that I would be tempted to not want to play him. So you would have to be looking for a rotating pair to go alongside him probably, if you are going to go Meslier. as your goalkeeper for these first few weeks. But of course, that means if you're holding and you're going to make some goalkeeper changes at wildcard, Messier could be a great one to come in at that point. Having a little look at Leno then, because he could be a good option. 11 clean sheets like Messier last season in 36 appearances. Made 87 saves. His opening fixtures are Brentford, Chelsea, Manchester City, Norwich, and then Burnley. So actually the fixtures are nice. If the Newcastle goalkeepers were fit, they are a really nice rotating pair. Now, of course, we've got both of them out at the moment with an injury and also with COVID recovery. So let's see what happens with those Newcastle goalkeepers. But if one of them's fit and available for game week 1, the Newcastle and Arsenal rotating pair does look quite nice for these first 5 game weeks. In this bracket, we've also got Kasper Schmeichel, owned by 12.7% of the game. So at this price point, he is the most popular goalkeeper option. 88 saves last season. Like Messier and Leno, also made 11 clean sheets in 36 appearances. So they're all quite similar. But I think in this category, for me anyway, if you're going to go with somebody, then you want to go with somebody that rotates nicely. Fabianski rotating with Brentford feels nice. But it's the Manchester United guys. If we get a word that one of them is first choice this season, or indeed one of them moves away from the club, which could happen because they have signed another goalkeeper, then we might be in for a really nice cheap option at Manchester United, who have made some phenomenal signings in this pre-season. Just a quick word for the new Wolves keeper. He is in there at 5 million. I don't think you're going there yet because the fixtures aren't great. He's one you can definitely afford to watch and wait and see what happens. Up at 5.5 million, we get a lot more selective. Just the 3 of them, Pope, Lloris and Martinez. Now, their percentage ownership stats are fascinating to me. So Lloris owned by 4.6% of the game, Pope at 5.7%, and then Martinez a whopping 39.7%. Now, that is on the basis of what he did last season when his stats were unbelievable. So he was 3rd for saves, as we saw earlier in this graph, with 143 saves made last season. He just was brilliant. And actually, whilst we're here, we can see Pope in there also in 5th with 116 saves. And then Lloris in 7th with 114 saves. So all of them making decent saves, but Martinez, they were just phenomenal stats. And when you think that it's only the 2 relegated keepers that made more saves than him, you can see how important he was to Aston Villa last time around. When we have a little look at XG prevented, then we can see these 3 coming up very highly in the stats. So we have Martinez in there in 2nd, Pope in 3rd and Lloris in 5th. Really good XG prevented stats from all 3 of them. You can see why they are worth the prices that they are. In terms of clean sheets, Martinez had 15, Lloris had 12 and Pope had 11. They do look good. Now, I think the benefit that you have with some of these guys, Pope in particular, is a lack of international duty or a lack of international time played anyway. Martinez, of course, was at the Copa America, so a lot of busyness over the summer, not really getting a rest. The same with Lloris. He was obviously at the Euros, although it did come back slightly earlier than I think a lot of us were anticipating, and did rejoin up with Spurs for the trip to MK Dons, the pre-season friendly that they had there, although he didn't play, he was on the bench. So he is back with the Spurs squad. So I think there's potential. The fixtures look okay, but of course Spurs have Manchester City on opening day, and I don't think you would really necessarily want Lloris there. Plus, I think there are some really good defender options at Spurs who could offer you better value for money than Lloris can. Martinez, I think he's going to continue to be popular, but I do think that there are better, cheaper options this time around. If he was 5 million, I'd say 100% Martinez. He'd probably be owned by like 70% of the game. But I do think there is definitely potential to go with the cheaper options. Having a look at these 3 then, the most expensive goalkeepers in the game, Alisson, Ederson and Mendy at Chelsea. This is why you're not going to own Kepa, because you're not going to rotate him with Mendy and spend, what's that going to be, £11 million on goalkeepers, mental amount of money. These guys aren't actually as popular as I thought that they might be. Ederson, the most popular of the 3 of them, 9.3% ownership. Mendy at 8.7% and then Alisson at 5.3%. Alisson last time around, as we've seen in this graph before, is top for XG prevented. He was 8th best for save percentages last season. Made 33 starts for Liverpool, so didn't make every game last time out and kept 11 clean sheets. But we should remember when it comes to Alisson that last season was particularly difficult for Liverpool defensively. They did not have their key man in Virgil van Dijk, but yet he still did okay, and we can still see the clean sheet percentage, the clean sheets kept. It's not too bad. He still kept 10, but it's Ederson who's up there for just topping the whole division in terms of clean sheets. 19 clean sheets from 36 starts. Only made 66 saves, and what's fascinating is that the save numbers for these guys are so much smaller than we saw in the guys before. So Martinez, Pope and Lloris had, nearly 400 saves between them. These guys, 84 for Alisson, 66 for Ederson and 57 for Mendy, and that tells you a lot about the defences that they had in front of them. So they're not necessarily going to tick over those save points in the same way that the 5.5 million goalkeepers are. But what you are paying for here is the clean sheet potential, and we shouldn't rule Alisson out on that basis, because last season defensively was really difficult for Liverpool, and they've got their defenders coming back for the new season. So I think he is a much better option this time around. You have to set and forget. If you're going Alisson, Ederson or Mendy, they have to be set and forget options, and you have to pair them with a really cheap 4.0 or 4.5 just in case the worst happens. But you're going to set and forget, to be honest. Mendy then, as I've mentioned, he made 57 saves last time around from 31 starts and 16 clean sheets. So he's second in there for clean sheets, and he obviously started 5 games less than Ederson last time. Chelsea defensively under Tuchel were so much better than they were under Lampard at the beginning of the season. He solidified his spot as first choice keeper at Chelsea. So I think the answer to who is the best goalkeeper is you can set and forget absolutely on Ederson, on Alisson, on Mendy. But I think the real value for money comes in this 4.5 bracket. So you can go with one of these 5.0 million options, particularly the Manchester United boys, if one of them is now as first choice. And then down here in this cheap bracket, we've got Sanchez, who is going to be popular, but don't overlook Watford's backman. I think he could be a really good option. You've got some really nice rotating pairs as well, with Arsenal and Brentford pairing nicely together. With Fabianski pairing really nicely also with Arsenal and Newcastle, and Fabianski with West Ham and Brentford pairing really nicely. You've got the potential for the set and forget on the two keeper options at Watford. We may have that at Brighton depending upon who is the number 2 and who is the number 3 goalkeeper. So I think that there's real potential here to save yourself a lot of money that you can spend on premium options across the rest of your team, and on affording those nice more of those nice mid-price midfielder spots, and going for slightly more expensive defenders like Trent, like Robertson, who I think offer better value for money than Alisson does. And likewise with the Spurs defenders, with players like Reguilon offering better value for money than Lloris does. So there's definitely scope in there for some good options. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe bell. And if you've got something to tell me about who you think are the best goalkeeper options, leave them in the comments below. Are you rotating pairs? Are you set and forget? Are you going for 2 mid-price and making decisions as you go through? Talk soon, guys.